The Senate will come to order. Members, prayer will be offered by the chaplain, Reverend Kirsten Fryer from Bethlehem Lutheran in the Midway in St. Paul, Minnesota. After the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise, members.
Good morning, Senators. You think you have a hard job today. You ask your chaplain to pray for you. And I will be doing that all day today, I promise. But when I'm not quite sure what to pray, I turn to the books of the Scriptures. And so today, from the book of Ecclesiastes that goes so far back, chapter 3, our prayer today. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Amen.
Members, if I could get your attention. Members, I need you to take your seats if you'd be so kind. Because we're in special session, things are a little different. It's as if we are reorganizing from the beginning. So there are some pieces of today that are a little different. That would especially be true for the beginning. The secretary is going to call the roll. Members, please answer when you hear your name called. So if you're in the retiring room, we ask that you come out so that we can get started. With that being said, the secretary will call the roll.
First District, Mark T. Johnson. Second District, Steve Green. Third District, Grant Hoschild. Fourth District, Robert J. Kupek. Fifth District, Paul J. Utke. Sixth District, Carrie Heinzman. Seventh District, Robert D. Farnsworth. Eighth District, Jennifer A. McEwen. Ninth District, Jordan Rasmussen. 10th District, Nathan Wiesenberg. 11th District, Jason Rarick. 12th District, Tori N. Westrom. 13th District, Jeff R. Howe. 14th District, Eric Putnam. 15th District, Gary H. Dames. 16th District, Andrew R. Lang. 17th District, Glenn H. Grunhagen. 18th District, Nick A. Frentz. 19th District, John R. Jasinski. 20th District, Steve J. Drazkowski. 21st District, Bill Weber. 22nd District, Rich Draheim. 23rd District, Jean Dornick. 24th District, Carla J. Nelson. 25th District, Liz Bolden. 26th District, Jeremy R. Miller. 27th District, Andrew Matthews. 28th District, Mark W. Coran. 29th District, Bruce D. Anderson. 30th District, Eric Lucero. 31st District, Calvin K. Barr. 32nd District, Michael E. Kroon. 33rd District, Karen Housley. 34th District, John A. Hoffman. 35th District, Jim Abler. 36th District, Heather Gustafson. 37th District, Warren Limmer. 38th District, Susan Pa. 39th District, Mary Kay Kunish. 40th District, John Marty. 41st District, Judy Seeberger. 42nd District, Bonnie S. Westland. 43rd District, Ann H. Rest. 44th District, Tu Zhang. 45th District, Ann M. Johnson Stewart. 46th District, Ron Latz. 47th District, Nicole L. Mitchell. 48th District, Julia E. Coleman. 49th District, Steve A. Swadzinski. 50th District, Alice Mann. 51st District, Melissa H. Wickland. 52nd District, Jim Carlson. 53rd District, Matt D. Klein. 54th District, Eric R. Pratt. 55th District, Lindsay Port. 56th District, Aaron K. May-Quaid. 57th District, Zach Duckworth. 58th District, Bill Liskey. 59th District, Bobby Joe Champion. 60th District, Doran Clark. 61st District, D. Scott Dibble. 62nd District, Omar Fateh. 63rd District, Zainab Mohammed. 64th District, Aaron P. Murphy. 65th District, Sandra L. Pappas. 66th District, Claire Umu Verbaten. 67th District, Fong He.
Members, a quorum is present. Members, please make note, a copy of the governor's proclamation is available on your desk. Members, the next order of business is motions and resolutions. The secretary will report Senate Resolution number 1.
Senators Murphy and Johnson introduced Senate Resolution number 1, a Senate resolution relating to organization and operation of the Senate during special session.
Senator Murphy for a motion.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President, members. Senate Resolution number 1 is an organizing resolution for this special session. It establishes rules for the special session, and I'd ask for your vote.
To the resolution, Senator Murphy already discussed the resolution. Is there anything else that you would like to say about the resolution before we vote, Senator Murphy? Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate that. And Senate Resolution 1 is a product of the agreement that was reached. Now, this is not of the overall agreement that House leadership, the governor, and Leader Murphy were part of. This is a separate agreement that is just on the ability to function here in the Senate today as we go through the process of getting to the budget bills, talking about our concerns within the budget bills themselves, and discussing the process that led us to today. And so although we have some immense disagreements within the budget bills themselves, this was the opportunity that we have to get that out in front of the public, to be able to speak to the bills and to speak to the issues within those bills, and spend the day together in addressing those issues that are impacting Minnesotans across the state. And so although the substance of the bills themselves, I think we're going to find a lot of debate on, we do need an orderly procedure to get through those, and that is why I am party to the Senate Resolution number 1.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, the secretary will take the roll. Senator Kunish, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye.
Mr. President.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Daines votes aye. All senators having voted, who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 3 nays, Senate Resolution Number 1 is adopted. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Secretary of the Senate notify the House of Representatives and the Governor that the Senate is now duly organized under the Minnesota Constitution and Minnesota statutes.
Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members remaining on the motions and resolutions, we will revert to the 8th order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read Senate File number 1.
Senate File Number 1, a bill for an act relating to higher education, providing funding and policy-related changes for the Office of Higher Education, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and the University of Minnesota.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy, for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File number 1 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read Senate File number 2.
Senator Prince introduced Senate File Number 2, a bill for an act relating to energy, appropriating and transferring money for energy and renewable development account programs and activities.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File number 2 on the table.
Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File number 3.
Senate File Number 3, a bill for an act relating to state government appropriating money for environment and natural resources.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that to lay Senate File number 3 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File number 4.
Senate File Number 4, a bill for an act relating to commerce.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File number 4 on the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File number 5.
Senate File Number 5, a bill for an act relating to education.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that to lay Senate File number 5 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File number 6.
Senate File Number 6, a bill for an act relating to state government, amending provisions on the Department of Health, Finance and Policy, health licensing boards, etc.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File number 6 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File number 7.
Senate File Number 7, a bill for an act relating to human services, amending provisions on aging and older adult services, disability services, health care, etc.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File number 7 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read Senate File number 8.
Senators Rasmussen, Gruenhagen, Utke, Curran, and Liskey introduce Senate File Number 8. A bill for an act relating to health modifying Minnesota care coverage eligibility.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 8 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File Number 9.
Senate File Number 9, a bill for an act relating to legislative enactments, correcting miscellaneous oversights, inconsistencies, ambiguities, unintended results, etc.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 9 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. All right. Members, the Secretary will report Senate File Number 17.
Senators Champion and McEwen introduce Senate File Number 17, a bill for an act relating to state government establishing a biennial budget for jobs, labor, and economic development.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 17 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, the Secretary will now report Senate File Number 18.
Senator Dibble introduced Senate File Number 18, a bill for an act relating to transportation, establishing a budget for transportation.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 18 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File Number 19.
Senators Rest, Frentz, Weber, and Hofschild introduce Senate File Number 19, a bill for an act relating to data centers, modifying various environmental and energy regulatory requirements governing data centers.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 19 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File Number 20.
Senator Rest introduced Senate File Number 20, a bill for an act relating to taxation, modifying individual income and corporate franchise taxes, property taxes, sales and use taxes, excise taxes, etc.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that to lay Senate File Number 20 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now read Senate File Number 21.
Senators Pappas, Housley, Rasmussen, Frentz, and Johnson-Stewart introduced Senate File Number 21, a bill for an act relating to capital investment, authorizing spending to acquire and better public land and buildings and for other improvements of a capital nature with certain conditions.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 21 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will now report Senate File Number 22.
Senator Pappas introduced Senate File Number 22, a bill for an act relating to capital investment, authorizing spending to acquire and better land and buildings and for other improvements of a capital nature with certain conditions.
The Senate file has been given its first reading. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File Number 22 on the table.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The remaining bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. The next order of business is motions and resolutions. The Secretary will read the author's motions.
Senator Hoffman moves that the name of Senator Mohammed be added as a co-author to Senate File Number 7, and Senator Limmer moves that the name of Senator Latz be added as a co-author to Senate File Number 9.
We will adopt the author's motions as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File Number 1 be taken from the table.
All in favor of that motion say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Murphy for your next motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to Senate File Number 1, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended to give Senate File Number 1 its second and third reading and place it on its final passage, and I ask for a roll call.
Any other discussion on that motion? Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, it's with great reluctance that we come and suspend the rules on these. This was part of the agreement, so we will fulfill the word of the agreement itself. But whether these bills are done today or Wednesday, the important thing that we're going to be getting after is the deficiencies and the wrong priorities within these bills. And so, you know, when it comes to the agreement, we weren't allowed in a lot of the conference committees. We weren't able to vet the process. In a number of those issues, we didn't have members sitting on that committee themselves. And so we've got a lot of questions. We've got a lot of things that we want to talk about today. And so we're going to get after it. We're going to get in there. We're going to expose what's in the bills. We're going to talk to the public, Minnesotans, what we want people to see and what we want people to know that's either wrong with the bills or things that we would have done better for them. And we're going to have that very vigorous debate. It's going to start here real soon. And we're going to work our way into 7 o'clock in the morning as we go through these bills. It's very, very important that that process is public. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. Instead of sitting and waiting until Wednesday and using up taxpayer dollars until Wednesday, let's do this efficiently and effectively. But I think we're going to have a very robust time here today, and I'm looking forward to that. And I will support the suspension of rules for that effort. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. Senator Convenes, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Jaskowski votes no.
Senator Jaskowski votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And Senator Jasinski votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 47 ayes and 20 noes. The motion to suspend the rules is adopted. The Secretary will read the Senate file.
Senate File Number 1, a bill for an act relating to higher education, providing funding and policy-related changes for the Office of Higher Education, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and the University of Minnesota.
The Senate file has been given its second reading. Now I'm going to call on the chief author of the bill to explain it. Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate File 1 is actually the higher ed omnibus bill that was agreed upon before session adjourned last time. It reflects the hard work and bipartisanship in the, between both bodies. The biggest challenge that we were facing and that we wanted to address this year was around the challenges facing the state grant program. So what we did was we addressed some of the parameters around that, things like the LME, the assigned family responsibility, and we added additional spending that was given from our budget target, $44 million in fiscal year 26-27 and $22 million in fiscal year 28-29. And this bill is good. We have a lot of provisions in here that were really important to members on both sides of the aisle. We have the hunger-free campus modifications, which was from Senator Putnam, the Central Care funding, also from Senator Putnam. We have the public institutions required to stock opiate antagonists, which was a Senator Weber bill. Senator Kupek has a bill permitting Mid-State to offer cybersecurity degrees. So there's a lot of good legislation in here. But again, our biggest priority was to address the state grant program shortfall in a way that wouldn't be too damaging to students, and adjusting the parameters in a way where we still keep our doors accessible and our institutions accessible for our students. So with that, this is a good bill, and I urge folks to vote green.
Any other discussion on Senate File Number 1? Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 1, a bill for an act relating to higher education, providing funding and policy-related changes for the Office of Higher Education, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and the University of Minnesota.
Third reading, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, now that we find ourselves in a special session, I have to go back and repeat everything I said about this bill during regular session. I'm just kidding. I won't do that to you. What I want to say as it relates to this bill and what I would say about my colleague, Senator Fate, is I do appreciate the focus and the emphasis that was placed on the state grant. I think both Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate and the governor to an extent saw that there was a need there. And so I won't belabor that point. I appreciate the effort that's being made there. What I will say is this, and I'll say it briefly. Over the last couple of years, we saw the University of Minnesota increase its tuition about 10%, and we just found out a few days ago they're looking to increase it another 6.5%. So what does that mean, members? It means that families and students here in the great state of Minnesota have seen what is now nearly a 20% increase cumulatively in tuition over just the last few years. And so we have to ask ourselves if what we're doing is working. I think if you look across all the state schools, colleges, and universities and the various tuition hikes and increases you've seen, like we said was going to happen a couple of years ago when we were talking about budget and policy bills, has come to fruition. And who's paying the price? Our students and our families who are already struggling to meet their needs, especially the need of funding their higher education needs. And so, Mr. President, while this bill is going to go forward and find some support and success, if we keep doing what we're doing, if we keep spending what we're spending, all we're going to do is continue to force Minnesota families to reach deeper and deeper into their pockets to try to find ways to pay for higher education, or what's worse, Mr. President, they're just going to opt out because they can't afford to do so. So while we're applying some funding to the state grant today, and that may be a good thing, it doesn't solve the long-term issue that we keep running into year after year after year as we see school after school in Minnesota increase their tuition rates. So this is a good step toward trying to prioritize what's truly necessary. We've got to do more in that regard, and at some point take a stand for making college affordable for students and families and trying to alleviate the overly burdensome student debt they're dealing with. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion before we take the vote on final passage of Senate File Number 1? Seeing none, Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I wasn't planning to speak to this, but because Senator Duckworth had some thoughts I wanted to share, just a brief reply. When I first came into the legislature, the state of Minnesota, through its general fund, provided 2/3 of the cost of providing education to our students in Minnesota. 2/3 to the University of Minnesota, 2/3 to Minnesota State. That model is flipped now through a series of budget problems. When I first entered, we had a substantial budget shortfall as well, and that started the erosion. Now we pay about 1/3 through the state general fund, and we have foisted upon our higher education institutions the need to increase their tuition in order to cover their costs. No matter what you want to say about the expenses of providing that education and where there may be overhead issues and where you think you can cut, all of that is a pittance in comparison to the overall budget of providing higher education to Minnesotans. And those educational institutions are the economic engine of our workforce creation, of our research dollars, of our new high-tech and biomedical business creation. Those are essential to providing our students and our economy in Minnesota. And the state's failure to provide funding for them is not the fault of the parents who end up carrying the load or the students who end up borrowing more. Basically, the legislature, over the course of time, has forced tax increases on students and parents because of the way we have failed to fund higher education out of our state budget. Now, I know where we're at now, and we're going to need to support this bill to get it done. But I don't want people to think that the message has been the university has been profligate in spending and raising tuition willy-nilly. This state legislature has forced them to do it in order to maintain the worldwide quality of education that Minnesota provides for our students.
Senator Eric.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, I agree. We used to fund 2/3 of the cost for our higher education institutions. We're not there anymore. But I think there's one major difference that we have to consider, and something that's been exposed this year. Just at the University of Minnesota alone, over 2,000 employees make more than the governor does at the University of Minnesota. We have to address the administrative costs that are at these institutions, and this bill fails to do that. We cannot get back to funding 2/3 of the costs of higher education if we don't get our hands around that particular issue. We're driving up costs to students not to give them a better education, but to create more administration for things that do not help students in the classroom. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention here at this point, we have failed one of our major requirements that we are asked to do every year in the higher education realm, and that is to appoint 4 regents to the University of Minnesota. 2 months ago, I asked when we were going to do that. 1 month ago, I asked when we were going to do that here on this floor. And it has never happened. We have shirked our responsibility, and we're going to be handing that over to the governor. That is a failure on our part. Thank you, Mr. President.
For the last voice we'll hear before we vote will be that of Senator Fateh. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Lucero, I didn't see you. Senator Lucero, and followed by Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually rise to a point of personal privilege under Mason, Section 222. It's point of personal privilege, Mr. President.
I have Section 222. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take a few moments here as we begin debate on a series of bills. This is deeply troubling, what we're doing here. In the days leading up to this, I've had conversations with members of my community and people across the state. The illegitimacy of the bills before us is shocking. It's insulting. And as we're about to vote on the first of a series of bills, again, it just deeply troubles me. It should trouble members of this institution, and it certainly troubles Minnesotans across the state. A supermajority of the 201 members of this legislature, 67 in the Senate, 134 in the House, were not involved in the discussions behind closed doors. The language that's before us in this bill and the series of approximately 15 bills lacked transparency. And the fact that we're going to be suspending rules avoiding first, second, and third readings results in lack of ability of Minnesotans to understand what's in these bills. The fact that we're going to vote on approximately 15 bills in one day, 15 massive bills, is an injustice. The other thing that's deeply troubling to me is the continued ceding of our authority as a legislative branch to the executive branch with conditions on how we're going to operate if we're called into a special session. It is not the role of the executive branch to attempt to exert influence on how we operate. And to somehow put forward some agreement as a condition to call a special session, again, is very insulting. So, Mr. President, I rise to this point because my comments are to all the bills. The illegitimacy, the insult to Minnesotans, and the continued operation and dysfunction of the executive and the legislative branch. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I had not planned to speak on this bill, but as I review the changes and what's happened, I'm just shocked at the direction that we're taking. I'm only going to only talk about 2 or 3 issues that are clearly troubling. This bill eliminates funds for United Family Medicine residency program. It eliminates funds for rural veterinarian loan repayment program. If you're in the rural areas, you know that these veterinary practices are ceasing because of the financial constraints. And we know that our clinics and our hospitals and our medical institutions need more employees, more residents, more physicians. And then as I read further, I see that the agreement before us eliminates the dual training grants. Excuse me, before us, it eliminates $3.6 million each biennium for Mayo Clinic's medical school residency program, and $14.9 million biotechnology and genomics research earmarked for U of M Mayo is being eliminated. These are the things that are changing health trajectory in this world, state, and country. So it's very alarming that we are reducing higher education funding for those who can help make our health, improve health, eliminate problems, and be very beneficial to all health across our state and our country, quite frankly. So we really have the wrong priorities here, folks.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, if Senator Fate would yield for a question.
Senator Fate, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh. Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Fate. You know, I served on the Higher Ed Committee in the other body, and one of the things that came up and things that got emailed on was that at that particular time, and this was a few years ago, so I'm just trying to check where it's at now, in the Big 10, and I think we're the Big 11 or 12 now, we were charging foreign students the lowest tuition out of the Big 10 or 12, and we are charging Minnesota students the highest tuition. Now, I think that improved a little bit, but I got emails from parents whose children or students were denied access to the University of Minnesota, and yet foreign students with similar grading were accepted. Again, whether foreign students should be vetted, and we've seen some of the problems at the University of Minnesota, that's a discussion for another day. What my question is about the tuition. Are Minnesota citizens, students, still paying higher tuition for the same classes than foreign students at the university? If you'd respond to that question. Thank you.
Senator Fate, to the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Gruenhagen, for the question. we know that resident tuition is actually 13th out of 18th. That's where we rank. So yes, we do have room to improve, but that's where we stand currently.
Senator Gruenhagen to the question, to the issue.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, Senator Fate, the question was, do you know if foreign students are paying a lower tuition for the same classes as Minnesota students are? Because in the past, Minnesota students were paying a higher tuition for the same classes than foreign students were. That's the question, if Senator Fate would yield.
Senator Fate, will you yield?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Gruenhagen. No, actually, foreign students pay several times more than resident students.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you for that response. So, members, it is something for each of us to look into, because in the past, that got reversed. And the other thing is, I think Minnesota students should be given preference in terms of admission versus foreign students, which again, they need to also be vetted. We've seen some of the problems up there, but that's a discussion for another day. So members, based on the other comments I've heard on this bill, I also will be a no. And thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Fate, your final comments before we vote on Senate File number 1 for final passage.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to make one quick correction also, that the United Family Medicine residency is actually funded in the bill, so it was not taken out. So that's just the first part. I want to say thank you to some of the members and the staff that took part in this, especially Senator Duckworth, who is a ranking member. We had weekly meetings in my office going through the agenda and talking about what's to come down the line, and he's been a very helpful partner in letting me know what their priorities were and setting the agenda weekly. So I want to say thank you to Senator Duckworth for your good work and bipartisanship. I also want to thank Senators Rarick, Farnsworth, and Utke, as well as Senators Putnam, Clark, Umaverbain, and Kupek, who were serving on the committee. I want to thank Tom Watson, who was the counsel, Megan Bursch, the fiscal analyst, our CLA, Chris Meyer, our researcher, Haley Bloom-Peterson, and our committee administrator, Sam Parmakar. From OHE, I'd like to thank Commissioner Dennis Olson, as well as Nikki Oliver, and our committee pages, Jill Cherney, Mitchell Winter, and Sydney Tiffany. We faced a lot of big challenges this session, especially around the state grant program, and everyone worked really hard to put together something. And I want to especially thank our committee administrator, Sam Parmakar, who really worked a lot, meeting with private colleges, Min-State, and the U, as well as the commissioner's office, to make sure that that everyone got the information they needed, and making sure that the committee was running smoothly this year. So I want to thank everyone for participating, and please vote green on this bill.
The Secretary will take the roll for final passage on Senate File number 1. Members, please vote. Senator Kunich, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Bolden votes aye.
And Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Daines votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
And Senator Abler votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 36 ayes and 31 noes, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File number 2 be taken from the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to Senate File number 2, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended as to give Senate File number 2 its second and third reading and place it on its final passage. And I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. The secretary will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Jaskowski votes no.
Senator Jaskowski votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And Senator Jasinski votes aye. Senator Kunesh, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 46 ayes and 21 nays, the motion to suspend the rules is adopted. The secretary will give the bill, the secretary will read the Senate file number.
Senate File number 2, a bill for an act relating to energy appropriating and transferring money for energy and renewable development account programs and activities.
The Senate file has been given a second reading. Senator Friends, as the chief author, please explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. Very proud to bring before you the Omnibus Energy, Utilities, Environment, and Climate Bill. This is a good bill. It was the product of a session's worth of work, Mr. President, and some real bipartisanship, but more on that in a minute. One of our former Senate majority leaders said on this floor, we want our energy to be clean, affordable, and reliable. And in pursuit of that, we bring forth these fiscal and policy provisions. First of all, members, we had a cut target. That's $4 million, but we do fund the operating adjustment for the Department of Commerce and the Public Utilities Commission. Those are recovered from ratepayers. We had to cut funding to pre-weatherization. This is the money we spend to help Minnesotans make their homes more energy efficient and save money on their electric bills. Please put a pin in that comment. We also had renewable development account appropriations. However, the House brought none into the discussions, and the bill contains no renewable development account. What that means, members, is that we're collecting $31 million from XL Energy Territory ratepayers, and we're doing nothing with it. I'd say that's a miss. On policy, members, I want to start by thanking each and every member of both caucuses on the Senate Energy Committee. We worked in a bipartisan fashion and produced policy provisions that passed out of committee 9-2. I mean to say this was one of the most bipartisan omnibus bills to come out of committee this session in any jurisdiction. Included in those policy provisions, when it left the Senate, a sunset for the Community Solar Garden program, modifications to net metering. Both of those would have saved Minnesota electric ratepayers money. An exemption for backup generation and data centers. B100, supported by Senator Weber, that would have allowed us to get the clean energy treatment for what is essentially a clean energy resource that we grow right here. We did not make changes to the state's nuclear moratorium. It is my position that we would need the support of Prairie Island Indian Community and Xcel Energy. We did not have those, but I appreciate the discussion and think we should have further study. And Senator Matthews' data center language was taken out of the bill and carried as a standalone. More on that later today. Lots of people said to me as we went into negotiations, well, next year's a policy year. We can work on policy next year. I don't think a lot of Minnesotans really care what year it is. I think they want us to do the right thing. This bill is back before you, members, with none of the policy that the Senate brought forward to save ratepayers money. Clean, affordable, and reliable. With that, Mr. President, I would ask members to vote yes on the bill. Thank you.
Senator Gruenhagen.
I'll yield to Senator Matthews. I'll go after him.
Senator Gruenhagen, you asked, I go according to the list. You're up now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just a couple comments from having been on the Committee for Energy. First, I want to thank Senator Friends for the way he ran the committee. Good discussions. I actually voted for the bill that came out of the Energy Committee. Had a lot of good provisions in it. And members, just to remind you of some of the testimony in the Energy Committee, we are, according to the testimony by certain agencies and providers, we are now at 36% of Minnesotans who can't pay their energy bills or are struggling to pay it. Members, I'll repeat that. We are now at 36% of our citizens are struggling to pay their energy bills or they can't pay their energy bills. And there were things in the bill that left committee that would have actually reduced energy cost. And we're going in a direction where we'll soon be at 50% of Minnesota citizens can't pay their energy costs or they're struggling. Think about that, members. You know, we want reliable, affordable, and clean. You need to go with nuclear and clean coal and natural gas. They provide all three. This Green New scam is also endangering federal money because of President Trump's executive order. And according to testimony, the Green Bank had $200 million, if I remember correctly, frozen. That's just the beginning. So we're endangering our federal funds by going down this Green New scam. Members, please vote no on this bill. We need to provide affordable, clean, and reliable energy. We're going the wrong direction. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the lead on the GOP Energy Committee, I did want to make some comments in response to Senator Frentz about the way that the committee's been working together. Mr. President, as the chair stated on here, we did have a bipartisan bill that came out of the committee and has done nothing but go downhill ever since. Unfortunately, the majority then voted against the very list that was read off that we had, including the chair, on nothing in here for hydro, nothing in here for wood or B100 or the data center piece or anything else. Unfortunately, this bill is, again, a giant swing and a miss. It's even more slimmed down than the bill that we voted on in the regular session. And so I'm voting no on this bill because of the policy pieces in here. I'm also going to vote no on it because of the process. The process for getting this bill here to the floor was one of the least transparent methods that I have seen. I got put on the I got put on the conference committee for the energy bill in the regular session, and that conference committee met a total of 0 times while we were in regular session. Then, after regular session ended and the working groups were formed, the energy working group met a total of, until yesterday, it was 0 times. And then yesterday afternoon on a virtual Zoom hearing, which is not easily accessible to the public to be able to come and present and have input, we had a 20-minute virtual hearing on Zoom to walk through the final product of the bill. Members, I expect a lot better from this institution. We had talks here on the floor from the leadership here in this chamber about how we were going to have open and transparent processes for these bills getting put together. Even when we have policy disagreements and we argue about our differing policies and then we vote to have whatever is going to be in the bill in its final form, we do it in an open and transparent process where the public has a chance to come in and give their thoughts and give their views about what they see as the policies in this bill. There was none of that with this energy bill this entire time. Not one conference committee and not one public hearing that the public could come and share their input. Calling a 20-minute virtual meeting as a sufficient walkthrough to tell the public about the bill does not meet any rational or reasonable definition of openness, honesty, and transparency in this entire process. Would have been better off to have just skipped the virtual hearing and brought this bill to the floor and gone, we had to decide this bill behind closed doors at the leadership level and then hand out, here's the final bill that we have to vote on, yes or no. So, when we come back into session next year and the Energy Committee has to work for another year, I'm going to expect and demand better from this institution to actually have real open and transparent meetings and processes that the public can come and share their input and share their views on the work that we are doing. I also want to talk about the RDA money. As was discussed, that is even stripped way down in this bill because the House would not agree, the House DFL would not make agreements on any of the other needed bipartisan policies in order to get a better deal done. And so the people of Minnesota need to know that, especially if you're a ratepayer in Xcel Energy territory, you are having extra money collected from you in your monthly bill, and that money is just sitting in a government bank account. It's doing absolutely nothing other than continuing to accumulate a larger and larger sum. It's actually time to start giving a lot of that fund back to the ratepayers because it gets spent on a lot of wild and outlandish projects. And in order to reduce the cost of energy, we could actually reduce the cost of energy that these ratepayers pay by giving and returning the money that they are having collected from them in this bill. And so we've been pushing. I know the House GOP was pushing to have a good chunk of it returned to the ratepayers out of this fund. And unfortunately, that was just a no-go in these negotiations. And so the public needs to know that if you're an Xcel ratepayer, you are having extra money taken from you in your bill, it is being collected, and it is just being stored and accumulated in a government bank account. And we can and should do much, much better. Unfortunately, this bill misses on a lot of key areas for policy. There's nothing in here for reducing the cost of energy. There's nothing in here for reforming the high and increasing cost of solar energy. Senator Frentz and myself were both working hard on community solar garden reforms, net metering reforms, on doing something to reduce the cost of energy in this arena of solar. Unfortunately, we have nothing of all of that work reflected in this bill. And so the costs to all of Minnesotans are going to continue to be high because Minnesota charges the highest cost of energy from these local community solar gardens, and they are the providers and the electricity companies are mandated to buy it from these people at the highest possible price, which then has to be sold to their ratepayers at the highest possible price in order to cover the costs that they are making. There's nothing in here for making energy more affordable and reliable. It's undisputed that the amount of energy consumption is projected to go significantly higher over the next decade or so, and we are going to have to commit significant resources into a lot more strong baseload energy generation. And so far, the majority in this chamber has not shown any willingness to do anything to increase baseload generation in the state of Minnesota. We are patting ourselves on the back for all of the resources that we are retiring in the state. We're retiring Sherco plants. We're retiring Boswell plants. We're retiring King plants. We're retiring a whole bunch of energy generating units with not a lot coming on to replace it. And that's going to leave Minnesota in the position where we're going to just simply be buying the energy we need from outside our borders and paying the cost without getting any of the jobs and tax revenue and other benefits to our local host communities, to the local economies for jobs and employment, and any of the other benefits that have come along with that. This bill swings and misses at that once again. There is nothing for nuclear energy here, despite the fact that I know a majority in this body want to lift the nuclear moratorium. The majority yet has not found the political will to do so. There is nothing for building and growing our energy supply in a sustainable way to meet the forecasted demands. So I'm going to ask members to vote no on this bill. Let's send it back and get a chance to put a better bill and a better deal forward that can actually reflect the bipartisan work that we have been doing here in the state of Minnesota.
Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, this bill to me is symbolic of this whole session. And what do I mean by that? When we came into session this year, I had high hopes of bipartisan bills that I could vote for. There's a tie over in the other body. There was this Blue Dog Caucus that gave us some optimism that we were going to be able to work together and have some good bills. And this bill came out of committee. I was excited when this bill came out of committee. There was a lot of bipartisan amendments, and I was excited to vote for it. In fact, I remember asking the bill's chief author when it was going to come to the floor because I couldn't wait to vote for it. There was finally a bill that I could vote for. And what happened, Mr. President? Partisanship happened. This bill went to the Finance Committee. All of the bipartisan amendments were stripped out, and it was turned into just a big clunker. And why do we need a good energy bill? Well, Mr. President, you may not know this, but in 2002, the state of Minnesota had some of the lowest energy costs in this state. I believe we were 41st out of 50. In other words, we had cheaper electricity costs than 40 other states. Now we're in the bottom third. So we're in the top third of cheapest energy. Now we're in the bottom third of cheapest energy. We have very expensive energy. We have higher taxes. We have a higher cost of living. And this bill has done nothing to bring down the cost of energy. We need better energy policy to help our ratepayers, and this bill does not deliver that. The bill that came out of committee could have helped with that, but because of partisanship, we didn't get that. This bill is just like what this entire session is. This bill is one empty promise, a big empty promise, and I plan to vote no on it, unfortunately, because I had hoped to be able to vote yes. Thank you, Mr. President.
We will now go to the last voice we'll hear. I'm sorry, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we had a good bill come out of the Energy Committee, and it got stripped down. It got stripped down in regular session. That original bill would have received a large number of bipartisan votes. Now, Mr. President, I appreciate the work that Senator Frentz did to pursue that original agreement, and I'm disappointed that he was forced to back away from that. We lost significant savings to Minnesota ratepayers as he described. And I'm personally disappointed, Mr. President, that the House refused to take a very simple provision, and I appreciate Senator Friend's support on this, to use emerald ash borer infected wood to generate affordable electricity. At a time when we have both an environmental crisis and we need more energy as demand continues to increase. Mr. President, Minnesotans deserve better. Senator Matthews talked about the lack of process and transparency. This entire bill was negotiated behind closed doors and rolled out hours before this session was expected to begin. Minnesotans expect us to work together. They expect us to be looking out and ensuring that our energy is both affordable and dependable. And I don't know that we have that in this bill. Energy is the backbone of our economy. It's what's going to spur the growth in our Minnesota economy and hopefully get us through whatever economic ups and downs that we may face. Mr. President, I'll be a no vote on this bill because it falls short. It falls short of the expectations Minnesotans have for us. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Secretary will give the bill its third reading before we go to the Senate author.
Senate File Number 2, a bill for an act relating to energy, appropriating and transferring money for energy and renewable development account programs and activities.
Third reading. Senator Friends, for your final comments, because others have spoken already, unless someone else wants to speak again. Before you, Senator Friends, we're going to go to Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Senator from Mankato, thank you for bringing this bill forward. Early on in the session, I think most of our members have expressed or talked about how excited we were for this bill. This was a real opportunity to dig into the nuts and bolts of energy and have some real reforms. You know, when I step into a grocery store and start buying eggs or bacon or milk, I realize that the price of energy is a huge cost to our local businesses, in our grocery stores, in our hardware stores, in those facilities across the state, in our schools, in our institutions of higher education. It's a big part of the cost of doing business in this state. And here we had the golden opportunity to really start to address some of those concerns. Things like the hydro cap on electricity generation, how that affects the carbon emissions standards, the wood burning restrictions and the waste, the actual opportunity to explore nuclear energy, not to even build it, but just to explore what options we'd have for this state in the long term. There were some real things that we could have done on reform, on the solar gardens and the net metering. We were very excited about that and the opportunity to dig into this to lower costs, not just in electricity, but in the goods and services that Minnesotans rely on day in and day out. Unfortunately, we saw this is another victim of partisanship. This is an issue that we have to put Minnesotans first. We have to make sure that we're addressing the cost of living for Minnesotans so that Minnesota is a place not only families want to come and live and prosper, and students from across the nation come to our institutions, but also businesses and jobs come back to this state. This is a place that we need to thrive and grow. This was an opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, this is a bill that falls far short of that, and we've thrown away, again, that opportunity to protect Minnesotans and put them first. So I'm unfortunately a no vote to this, although I do know the Senator from Mankato put a lot of work into this and had a lot of battles on it. Unfortunately, it's not one that I can support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Senator Friends, before we vote on Senate File Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. To the comments about process and transparency, I agree. We requested having the conference committee meetings being public. That request was not honored. The Senate did not have the gavel, but I think that's a fair point. To my friend Senator Johnson from East Grand Forks, thank you. Cost of living is very important. That's exactly why the Senate energy provisions would have lowered costs. The fact that we weren't able to negotiate those out does not change the truth, which is that those things would have provided the same amount of clean energy and lowered people's costs. Finally, one last time, thanks to everybody who worked on the bill, the members, the nonpartisan staff, the partisan staff members. The bill's not perfect, but it funds the Commerce Department energy, it funds the PUC, it keeps us moving and sets the table for the next year in what I think should be some very entertaining discussions at this Capitol on energy policy. With that, Mr. President, I ask members to vote yes.
The Secretary will take the roll on Senate File Number 2. Senator Convenes, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Bolden votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Barr votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
And Senator Abler votes aye. All senators having voted who desires a vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 35 ayes and 32 noes, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File Number 9 be taken from the table.
All in favor say aye.
No.
Hold on. It's Senate File Number 3. Senator Murphy.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I move that Senate File Number 3 be taken from the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to Senate File Number 3, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended to give Senate File Number 3 its second and third reading and place it on its final passage, and I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. The Secretary will take the roll on the motion to suspend rules. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Barr votes no.
And Senator Barr votes no. Senator Convenes, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye. Senator Pryor, are you voting? Senator Parr, are you voting? All senators having voted, who desires to vote? The secretary will close the roll. There have been 48 ayes and 19 noes. The motion to suspend the rules is adopted. I am now calling on Senator. The secretary will give the bill its second reading.
Senate File Number 3, a bill for an act relating to state government, appropriating money for environment and natural resources, appropriating money from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund.
The Senate file has been given its second reading. Senator Hurd, for you to explain briefly on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Senate File 3 is our special session omnibus environment budget bill constructed by our bipartisan working group of the House and the Senate. And I want to thank and acknowledge our Senate members, Senator McCune, Senator Kunesh, Senator Johnson Stewart, and Senator Green, as well as our House counterpart, Chair Heinzman, Chair Fisher, and their House members. I also like to thank our environmental committee as well. This bill, Senate File 3, is a true compromise bill. There are things we reluctantly accept by both bodies and things that all sides make concessions. Senate File 3 comprises a permitting reform language that has the support of the Chamber of Commerce and agreed by our agency, and the trust fund community grant that has the support of our environmental advocates. Some highlight items in this bill include the abandoned watercraft provision, outdoor school for all, mercury skin lighting creams, veterans with disability fishing license waivers, year-round bass season, mushroom foraging task force, funding for White Bear Lake water management, extension to water quality 3D, and Keep It Clean programs are among the items. We also include a few exemption and compliance extension to certain products under the newly enacted PFAS regulation, such as use ATV, airport form, as recommended by MPCA's 2025 report to the legislature. Article 1 in this bill is the environmental budget appropriation to agency like MPCA, DNR, Bowser, Minnesota Zoo, Met Council, and the Science Museum of Minnesota. Article 2 is the 2025 LCCMR recommendation language. Article 3 is the Environmental Trust Fund community grant with emphasis on trail improvement and AIS. Article 4 is the environmental policy provision, and Article 5 is the DNR lands bill. Article 6 is the permitting reform language. Members, again, this is a true compromise bill. There's no happiness here, but a bill that will keep our agency running and instruct them with highlight items, as I mentioned earlier, and ask members to give a green vote for this bill.
Members, we now go to amendments. So the first part will be on amendments, and then if you just want to speak, we ask that you do it after third reading, but we're going to recognize Senator Weissenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will move the A8.
Senator Weissenberg offers the A8 amendment. The Secretary will report the A8 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg moves to amend Senate File Number 3 as follows. Page 132, after line 2, insert. This is the A8 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg, to your A8 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was just a policy correction, and there is policy in the bill now. This is asked for by Bob Meyer of DNR. Right now, we when we're trapping fish and we catch carp. Currently in the law, there's no clear way how to transport them. You can't leave them later, but you also can't transport them. So this just says if they're eviscerated, it means to have their internal organs removed from the body cavity or to have the gill severed, then we can move the fish. So it just would make a way for us to transport the fish from where they were caught. Thank you, Mr. President.
To the A8 amendment, Senator Herr.
Mr. President, this is not in an agreement from our working group, our strong bipartisan and our Republican Democrat negotiation, so I ask members to vote no.
Any other discussions? Senator Klein.
Mr. President, I request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Any other discussions? Senator Kroon, we're on the A8 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Herr yield for a question?
Senator Herr, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Herr. In your response to your position on this amendment that's before us, I heard you say that it wasn't in the agreement, so we should vote no. I'm wondering if you have a substantive reason why we should vote no on this amendment.
Senator Herr, to the question.
There's a few reasons, but I just want to say that as part of the negotiation outside of the Senate bill, when they went to conference committee and transformed to a working group, was a finance bill, and the House side was didn't contain limited financial budget, and so this is not part of the negotiation that the House brought forth as a policy.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I understand there was a working group. I understand they did some work, and I understand that this wasn't part of the agreement, but that doesn't answer my question, which is what substantive reason should we not vote for this amendment? I don't really care what a working group did behind closed doors. That isn't going to sway me on how I vote on this amendment. The lack of transparency in this process is shameful. This whole process leading up to special session has been shameful. And it's reflected in the response we just got from you on an amendment that was brought in good faith. I'll save my comments more for a different bill, but I thought this amendment was pretty reflective of the problem we're having here in this chamber legislating in a way that Minnesotans expect. So I'll be voting for this amendment because Senator Wiesenberg stood up and gave a reason why we should vote for the amendment, and all I heard in response is it wasn't part of the agreement.
Any other discussion on the A8 before I go back to the author who will have the last word? Seeing none, Senator Wiesenberg, to your A8 amendment before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Kroon. And yeah, it's good. It's a good amendment. It does good things. Doesn't cost money. It helps Minnesotans. Please vote green. Thank you.
The secretary will take the roll on the A8 amendment. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Barr votes aye.
And Senator Barr votes aye. All senators having voted? Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 30 ayes and 34 noes, the A8 Westenberg amendment is not adopted. Senator Weissenberg, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the A6 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg offers the A6 amendment. The secretary will report the A6 amendment.
Senator Wiesenberg moves to amend Senate File Number 3 as follows. Page 138, after line 3, insert. This is the A6 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg, to your A6 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the purple paint bill. I believe it passed in our Environmental Committee without any controversy. It doesn't cost money. It gives people another way to mark their land. There was a bill in the House that was agreed upon, from what I remember, by both bodies. And now in this bill that we have before us, there is policy in here. So this is policy that is not controversial. It would allow you to paint purple around your property so people will know that it's posted. And we use purple paint because people that are colorblind can see it, and 26 states have similar laws. It's a good bill. Thank you.
Senator Herr.
Mr. President, my answer would be the same as the other amendment, that has been a tough negotiation between Republicans and Democrats, and work hard on this bipartisan, so I ask members to vote no.
Senator Kupik.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Anyone else before I go to the author of the A6? Seeing none, Senator Weissenberg, to your A6 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, it's easy. It's not controversial. It doesn't add fees. It would allow me to put purple paint around my property so people know that it's posted. I thought this was probably the most non-controversial piece of legislation we could be looking at, and there's no hard conversations we have to have over this. Please vote green.
The secretary will take the roll on the A6 Weissenberg amendment. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
And Senator Barr votes aye.
And Senator Barr votes aye. Anything else, Senator Rasmussen? If not, I'm going to close the roll.
I don't have any more to report, Mr. President.
All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 30 ayes and 34 nays. The A6 Weissenberg Amendment is not adopted. Senator Weissenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the A7.
Senator Weissenberg offers the A7 amendment. The secretary will report the A7 amendment.
Senator Wiesenberg moves to amend Senate File Number 3 as follows. Page 138, after line 22, insert. This is the A7 amendment.
Senator Wiesenberg to your A7 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the preference points for bear hunters. Currently, you have to be 10 to start hunting bear. Senator Rucky actually carried this before as well. This would just allow you to start, I think you carried this anyway, something similar. This would allow children age 6 to start applying for a permit. They would not be able to hunt, but then by the time they're 10, they could hunt bear. The DNR likes this. It was agreed upon in our environmental committee. And again, this is now a policy bill. So this is just also going to raise revenue for the state. It doesn't cost any money. It raises revenue for the DNR, and it keeps kids hunting. Thank you, Mr. President. Vote yes.
Senator Hurd to the A7 amendment.
Member vote no to reflect the strong agreement between our body, the Republicans, and also Democrat in the House and the Senate. Thank you.
Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Any other discussion before we go to the author? Seeing none, Senator Wiesenberg to your A7 amendment before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is creating opportunities to keep kids hunting. It raises revenue. The DNR likes this. If you vote for this, you'll be loved in your communities. There's many people in the metro that like hunting, and this will help them enjoy the outdoors as well. Vote green.
The secretary will take the roll on the A7 Wiesenberg amendment. Members, please vote. You should be at your desk and voting. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have to report.
All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 27 ayes, and 36 noes. If you want to record your vote because you came in after I closed the roll, Senator Latz.
Latz votes no.
Latz votes no. Senator Hoffman.
Hoffman votes aye.
Hoffman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 28 ayes and 37 noes, the A7 Weissenberg Amendment is not adopted. Senator Weissenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the A9.
Senator Weissenberg offers the A9 amendment. The Secretary will report the A9 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg moves to amend Senate File Number 3 as follows. Page 24, line 26, delete 10,499,000. This is the A9 amendment.
Senator Weissenberg to the A9 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you have farms in your district, you're going to want to pay attention to this amendment. Currently in the state, the deer farmers are suing the state of Minnesota over their right to farm. Currently, well, not currently, they had a court hearing a few weeks ago, and the state of Minnesota claimed in case number 24-2845, 2 times in their brief to the court, that farming is not constitutionally protected in the state of Minnesota. So they are saying that you do not have a constitutionally protected right to farm in the state of Minnesota. Under our Constitution, deer farming is considered livestock. So the state of Minnesota in court said, you do not have the right to farm. I've been saying for years that if this passes and they take away the rights of deer farmers to farm, they're coming for you next. And if you listen to the brief and what they said in court a few weeks ago and you're a farmer, you should be very scared. And if you're a senator representing farmers, you should vote yes on this amendment. What my amendment does is gives the Board of Animal Health the direction to oversee deer farms taken away from the DNR. In the first week of session, Bob Meyer even stated that if that's what they want, then I guess they can have it kind of chuckling. And this would be a step to help protect farms in the state of Minnesota. I'm not going to go through all the science again because it doesn't seem like that sticks in people's heads, but there's science also right now, like we talked about with scraping sheep. We have the same thing in CWD. Other states, rather than shutting deer farms down, are actually using deer semen that is CWD free to breed their deer, and we can breed this out of the deer farmers. We can do this in Minnesota. Deer farmers are already doing it, but the state of Minnesota is trying to shut deer farms down. We should be trying to save them, and we can do it. We just have to do this. We have to do what's right. We have to save farms, and if deer farms go down, cattle farms are next. And if you've got cattle farms or pig farms or chicken farms or any kind of farms in your district, the state of Minnesota said they do not have a constitutionally protected right to farm, and they're coming after you. So please vote green on this, and thank you very much.
Senator Hurd to the A9 Weissenberg Amendment.
Members vote no to honor the tough negotiation and bipartisan vote.
Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Westrom. I was ready to call him every name but Westrom. Senator Westrom, sorry about that, buddy.
Mr. President, no problem. Mr. President, I just would urge members to vote yes for this amendment. This again underscores the urgency we have to protect some farmers in this state that have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and their own capital into trying to make their farms successful, that the DNR continues to be adversarial with. And so, members, it is our job and duty as legislators representing family farmers across this state to put our foot down and let the agency know once again they exist only because the legislative body exists. We don't have to fund them. They don't get to call the shots. The legislature calls the shots. And so it's very appropriate that we adopt this amendment and once and for all emphasize the importance of deer farmers and other farmers across the state, and the DNR can take direction from us rather than us take direction from the DNR. It is backwards, and it's time to have the tail stop wagging the dog.
Any other discussion before we go to the author of the amendment? Seeing none, Senator Weissenberg, we're on your A9 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Westrom. What he said is all true, and we need to legislate here, and we need to stop farms from being attacked in the state of Minnesota. It's a real thing, and if the deer farmers lose, they're coming for other farms next. They said it. They said it in their brief. Farming is not a constitutionally protected right in the state of Minnesota. That's what the state of Minnesota is telling farmers in the state of Minnesota. Vote for this amendment, and let's protect farming. Vote green. Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on the A9 Weissenberg amendment. Senator Broding, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Daines votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have to report.
All senators having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 25 ayes and 34 noes, the A9 Weissenberg amendment is not adopted. Senator Coran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the A11 amendment.
Senator Coran offers the A11 amendment. The Secretary will report the A11 amendment.
Senator Coran moves to amend Senate File Number 3 as follows. Page 139, after line 10, insert. This is the A11 amendment.
Senator Coran, to your A11 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is in relationship to the Mount Simon Hinckley aquifer, which starts in Minnesota, runs under Minnesota down to Iowa. It's a critical aquifer which we ruled inaccessible for commercial purposes, I think sometime 2019 or something like that. But we made a blanket cover for all of the state of Minnesota. What has arisen since then has been the need for just a small handful of farmers where they need access, where they're existing farmers. We're not talking about net new, we're talking about existing farmers who have wells that were drilled, allowed by the DNR, but are unable now to get those permitted. They're for limited use purposes, and what this bill does is it grants the DNR commissioner the ability to, on an exception basis, outside of the 7-county metro area, that was changed, that would not allow them in the 7-county metro area. That's a long-standing policy, and that was a change that the House made in the bill this session as they moved it through their committee. And what it does, it would allow them put, for unique purposes and limited use purposes, where they put very strict criteria for sections of that aquifer which reach our district. And so on the western side of the city of Isanti, running all the way up to Duluth, the aquifer, that's a recharge area. And in that particular area, there are no other aquifers available for the ability to produce wells. So in those limited instances, this would grant the DNR the ability to issue those types of permits with really strict regulations, monitoring and limited volumes. So with that, Mr. President, it was a bill that we have put it on. Senator has allowed it on one of our bills to try and get it through. It doesn't cost us anything. It's a good policy that the DNR needs and our farmers need. We have actual real farmers that have critical needs for this for these resources. So thank you, Mr. President. Request a green vote and request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Hurd to the A11 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask members to vote no to honor our tough negotiation and bipartisan work.
Any other discussion before we go to the author for final comments? Seeing none, Senator Coran. Any final comments?
Mr. President, we're good.
The Secretary will take the roll on the A11 amendment. Senator Roden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no.
And Senator Westland votes no. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Daines votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have to report.
All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 30 ayes and 34 noes. The A11 Koran amendment is not adopted. Any other amendments before I go to third reading? Seeing none, the secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3, a bill for an act relating to state government, appropriating money for environment and natural resources, appropriating money from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund.
Third reading. Any other discussion before we vote? Senator Green. Senator Green, hold on one moment. You're going to be first, but I want to see if anyone else so I can put them on the list before we go to the Hochschild. Okay, great. Anyone else? Senator Green and then Senator Hochschild.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hurd had pointed out a few things in this bill that were good, and there are a couple things in the bill that are good, but there's glaring problems with the bill, but also the process. He thanked me for serving on this committee, but the fact is I really didn't serve on the committee. I was invited into the first meeting to go to the walkthrough. The chairs of the committees in the House and Senate went behind closed doors. They formed the bill, and I was invited back to hear what was in the bill. Didn't even get a chance to vote on that in the working group, and it was just thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to drive to St. Paul and hear what we have to tell you. It's a poor process. It was a very poor process. But I think the people of Minnesota really need to know what's in this bill. Because usually when you bring on a bill, you hear what the good things in the bill, and that's all you hear. But I need to point out some things. First of all, back with the process, I had one amendment that was going to go in this bill, had some success in the beginning of it, and that was for extensions for logging permits. We have a number of loggers in northern Minnesota that can't get their lumber sold on the permits that they've required and the contracts that they bought through the state because the mills aren't buying the lumber. If they cut the lumber and pile it until the mills can take it, then they have a problem with losing money because the wood is not as valuable after it sits. It was very simple. It was just a simple extension of permits. I was called when the conference committee was in session. I was called and asked if they put that in the bill, would I vote for the bill? It was disgraceful. And my answer was I can't agree to vote for a bill that I haven't seen. And so the logging permits didn't go in. That's the process. That's what's going on here. And when you look at the few things in the bill that are good, and you got to ask yourself, what are they worth? Just exactly what are they worth? How much money does this bill actually spend? The all funds budget in this bill is about $2.6 billion. Now, last year, in fact, excuse me, it's 2.3. Last year it was 2.6, sounds like a reduction. However, last year we increased spending by such a great amount that normally this bill runs at about $1 billion. And in the year before, we spent the $18 billion and raised taxes by $10 billion. We had $1.4 billion. That's what they had to spend. We've added $1 billion to that in this bill. I don't think that's good. There was a small decrease in this bill to the general fund, about $14, $15 million that they took away from the general fund. But they backfilled it with fee increases and shifts from other accounts like the environmental fund. And that adds up to $60 million. So the people of Minnesota are getting fee increases between about $30 million and the shifts from other funds, another $30 million. It just keeps coming and coming. And in that, the DNR is hiring 9 new employees. PCA is 6 new employees in excess of $100,000 a year, I'm sure. And yet we're touting the good things in this bill. When you think about the increase of $1 billion over a couple biennium, and now we have to raise fees and shift more money into this to hire another 15 FTEs, what are they doing with the money? We don't know, because a lot of it goes out into the agencies, and they just get to decide what it goes for. That's not the way we should be doing business. It's just simply not. I'm not going to belabor this, but I do have to touch once again on the trust fund money in this bill. There was just to be clear, the Environmental Trust Fund in Minnesota, in that account, has nearly $2 billion in it. $2 billion, and it grows every year. Not only do we put money back into that fund, but they have their own patents on certain things that they sell or that are out there, and they get money from that. So that money will continue to grow. Now, last year on the ballot, we agreed, or the Minnesotans agreed, to vote for clean water. And when they did that, what they did was they increased the amount that gets spent out of that trust fund from 5.5%, an additional 1.5% that goes into a separate account. And that's where the new grants were that Senator Herr was talking about. But the 5.5% adds up to $1.3 million every year. And out of this bill, in this bill, for over 40 million of that goes right to the university and state colleges. And if you don't have the book that tells you how that money is spent, but if you did, you would see that that $40 million is going to backfill the wages of the professors and administration within our state colleges and universities for the summer months when they're supposed to have off. Does that sound like clean water to you? Is that enhancing your clean water? I seriously doubt it. Another $13 million, I believe it is, goes right to the DNR. So over 50% of this bill is going for studies to the University of Minnesota and the DNR. There's millions of dollars in here to non-government entities, such as Ducks Unlimited. There's purchasing more of land. There's money in this bill that's set aside specifically to get more federal money to purchase more land. $1 million of this bill goes to leverage money from the federal government to take more land out of our property tax rolls, drive up costs for the people that would like to own that land and raise their families on it. That's what's in this bill. That's what you're voting for today. If you haven't figured it out by now, I don't really care much for this bill. Let me get to my second page here. There's about $2 million in here for community tree grants, and that's in other bills as well. More tree grants. That's a special project for somebody in the House. I know that for a fact. And it just goes on and on. There's money in here for what is supposed to be expediting permits, but really it's just going to the MPCA and the DNR and Bowser. And once again, we're giving them money there on the one end, and on the other end, we are increasing the budgets so that they have that money as well. Every year I go through these bills, and most of the time nobody listens. And I'm hopeful that in the future, and I hope that this bill doesn't pass, but if it does, I'm hopeful in the future that we can keep pointing these things out and correct them so that clean water money goes to clean water, and that the agencies stop getting more and more authority. Even in the permitting reform, there's a switch in there that if the commissioner of the MPCA decides that they don't want to give the expedited permitting or give the relief that is in the permit language, they have that option. So that clicks that off as well. So, Mr. President, members, I encourage you to actually read through the bills and then dig in and see what the money goes for. But I encourage a no vote.
Senator Hochschild.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. In 1973, there was a Time magazine cover of Minnesota. And in that article, it talked about how the state of Minnesota is a state that works. And I think that's really important because that was over 50 years ago, and a state that works has really become, in my mind, a motto for our state. But that doesn't just continue to happen. You have to want to be a state that works for businesses and labor, that is a place where people can operate efficiently and effectively, that can get their permits on time. And over my years in the legislature, I have continually heard from the business community and the labor community about the need for reforming our permitting process so that we are competitive as a state with bringing businesses into our communities. And that's why last year, as well as this year, I've worked in a bipartisan manner on important permitting reform. And it's really important to note that there are no changes to our strong environmental standards or our labor standards in these permitting reform changes that we are making. But we were able to work with stakeholders across the spectrum, from environmental groups, the Chamber of Commerce, the building trades, and others, to come together to a compromise that I think takes us one step closer to being and continuing to be a state that works. I want to just very quickly give a big thank you to my colleague across the aisle and in the House, Representative Josh Heitzman. He has worked tirelessly in an honest, transparent, and as a passionate advocate on permitting reform alongside me, and we were able to bring these stakeholders together to create what I think is a clear and efficient and transparent process for permitting reform. And as former Governor Perpich used to always say, jobs, jobs, jobs. That's what matters first and foremost. And I think that's what this permitting reform in this bill does. I want to thank Chair Herr for agreeing to have this in the bill as well and working alongside us on this compromise. Thank you, Mr. President.
The last voice we'll hear from is Senator Herr before we vote. Senator Herr, your brief comments, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Hauschild and Senator Green. And again, members, this is a true compromise bill. And I appreciate my members for their trust in me in the negotiation. It is indeed, there's two public hearings. And in the past, my experience, sometimes I'll just rubber stamp when there's conference and when there's conferencing or working group. And I did a little bit more. Even though there's two public hearings, within that span of time, our negotiation was stand still between permitting reform and the community grant, which is part of the Environmental Trust Fund, moving the bar to 100%, and also fight for allowing release of LCCMR package. So that whole process was a standstill, and I appreciate the trust of my member to allow me to negotiate within the chairs. And I have kept out my members, member from my caucus, as well as Senator Green, in the loop. I call, on a daily base, as much daily base. I could dismiss member from the other aisles, but I've been keeping everybody on track while I negotiate with the chair on the standstill part. And I would trust that that's a process that people will value us in our republic, that people elected us to do something that doesn't require tens of millions of people to be in the same room at the same time. So appreciate the work that we got this far. I want to thank my House counterpart, co-chair Josh Heisman, co-chair Peter Fisher, and House Conferees, our House Working Group, Representative Purcell, Representative Finke, Representative Nelson, Representative Shorts. I also want to thank member in our Senate body that part of the working group, Senator McCune, Senator Ann Johnson Stewart, Senator Mary Kunish, and Ranking Minority Lead, Senator Steve Green. Also want to thank our additional committee members in the Environment Committee, Senator Hauschild, Senator Hoffman, Senator Lane, Senator Wiesenberg, and Senator Drokowski. I also want to thank our committee staff, Mr. Dan Mueller, our fiscal analyst, Mr. Ben Stanley, Senate Counsel, Carla Josephson, my trusted committee administrator, Mike Calvu, my committee legislative assistant, and Cassie Tomadov, our excellent DFL researcher, as well as Victor Flora, another excellent GOP researcher. and Olivia, Senior, and Michael, our community pages, and our intern, especially don't forget to thank our intern. This year I have one, Isaac Sparber. So thank you very much, and I ask for your support on this bill and vote green.
The Secretary will take the roll on Senate File Number 3. This is for final passage. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Daines votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
And Senator Westrom votes no.
And Senator Westrom votes no.
And Mr. President, I'm waiting on a couple more.
All right, we await. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
And Senator Abler votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 38 ayes and 29 noes, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.
Before I call on Senator Murphy, for those of you who are interested, Senate 3, House 0. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Senate File Number 17 be taken from the table.
On the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion prevails. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to Senate File Number 17, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended as to give Senate File 17 its second and third reading and place it on its final passage. And I ask for a roll call, please.
There will be a roll call. Secretary will take the roll. those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
I'm sorry, Madam President. Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And thank you, Madam President. Senator Westrom votes no.
Senator Westrom votes no. Senator Bolden, for those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fonte votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye. All senators having voted, the secretary will close the roll. There being 49 ayes and 18 nays, the motion prevails. The secretary will read the Senate file number.
Senate File Number 17, a bill for an act relating to state government establishing a biennial budget for jobs, labor, and economic development.
The bill has been given its second reading. I request that Senator Champion begin the discussion of this bill. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, body, for the opportunity to present Senate File Number 17. As in the past, this bill is merged with the labor portion of our work here in the Senate as well. So I'm going to present the jobs and economic development portion first. So I want to say, first of all, thank you all for this opportunity. As we've done in the past, we've worked very hard in order to make sure that this bill reflects all of Minnesota. And I'm very proud of this jobs bill, and we are grateful to have the support of all of our GOP colleagues on the Jobs Committee when it passed out of committee, and we've managed to keep a lot of it intact in negotiations with the House. I think the first thing I'd like to highlight is that we avoided completely zeroing out our successful deed programs like the Job Creation Fund and the Minnesota Investment Fund. That was in the House bill that passed off the floor, so reversing that was certainly a win in our view. We passed this bill off the floor with the support, as I mentioned, for all corners of the state, whether it was through competitive grants or direct appropriation. And while we had to compromise on some things, we considered important to keep the majority of our priorities intact. That means all corners of our state will have something to help in this bill. I do want to highlight a few differences that are largely provisions we had to accept from the House. So the bill you voted on or supported from the House, from the Senate going forward in the job bill is largely intact, as I mentioned earlier. First of all, one of the things that we did accept is that there is a task force to evaluate the competitive grants process that DEED conducts. This was a very high priority for both House chairs, and we agreed. We look forward to hearing what suggestions the task force will have on improving the competitive grants making process to make sure that the communities of color, as well as all across the great state, are well represented going forward. The second thing I'd like to highlight is that there's additional funding for competitive grants program in our bill, such as Youth at Work competitive grants program, an increase of $2 million this biennium. This was also a major House priority, as well as some of our members as well. Third, one of the few direct appropriations that saw an increase in negotiations was with the House, was includes, which was a priority of Chair Baker, our GOP House counterpart. We eventually acquiesced to that funding increase request. Fourth, we increased funding from the Workforce Development Fund to vocational rehabilitation services. I know that was something that Senator Draheim felt very strongly about, as well as others. So as you may recall, we allocated $2 million a biennium to address the budget shortfall for DEED and VRS, eventually brought brought this to our attention. We also intended to address the shortfall to make sure we could avoid service interruptions and layoffs, but we wanted to send a clear message that we were not happy with how DEED and VRS hid this information from us for months, only to come to us late in the game and ask us to solve a huge budget gap. But ultimately, we got it solved. And in conjunction with DEED, the administration and the House, we agreed to put $5 million a year and $10 million a biennium towards this budget gap, which we feel good about. Ultimately, it was not the staff's problem or the people who VRS serves that I had fought, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't bear the brunt of that budget shortfall. We were also, number 5, able to provide ongoing funds for the Promise Act, which represents not only just the metro area, but suburban Minnesota, but also the rural area. And we've done great work with NDC, which, as well as the Minnesota Initiative Foundations, and to have something that they could go forward with, create some predictability, and we thought it was important to do. And so we're very proud of the bill, both for businesses and training and even oncology, so that up in the rural area, they're able to get those services and develop folks in that industry as well. So thank you, and I'll stand for any questions on the job side of the equation. And Madam Chair, I'm not certain if you want to do jobs first and then we do ours, or if you want to have Senator McEwen say anything now.
First, are there questions or comments on the jobs part of the bill? Seeing none, I request Senator McEwen continue the discussion of this bill from the Labor Committee. Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It's my pleasure today to discuss and to present to you, my colleagues, the results of our negotiations in the labor portion of this bill. I'm very pleased to say that we reached some what I feel are excellent compromises with between our bill and the House bill. I'll just run through them very quickly. First of all, we were very pleased. I think a big win for everyone is that we were able to fund the fraud impact report that was a bill brought forward by Senator Uma Verbaeten to conduct a study. And so that study will be funded, and then we will require the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry to conduct the study again in 6 years, subject to available appropriations at that time. In addition, in the area of misclassification, we were able to fund an increase for misclassification enforcement staff for the Department of Labor and Industry. So very pleased to be able to do that. We were also able to accept the House proposal for a statewide registered teacher apprenticeship program, which is something that we supported, but until we received our adjusted targets that were the joint targets, we hadn't been able to include that. But then with our a little bit of a bump in our targets, we were able to include that. We were also able to fully fund the pre-apprenticeship programs, including the Helmets to Hard Hats, Career Pathways program, and Building Strong Communities. Those are all now fully funded. The final bill does include also Senator Seeberger's bill to promote mental health in the construction industry, which we're all very pleased to support. We did negotiate a compromise on the employee rest and meal break proposal. That item in particular was a matter of contention for some of my colleagues across the aisle. We did remove the penalties. Those of you who took issue with that will be happy to hear as part of our negotiation. And we did also specify that employees could voluntarily waive their rest or meal breaks, and we delayed the effective date to January 1st, 2026. We also adopted a compromise that was reached with the Manufactured and Modular Home Association and the realtors on the manufactured home fee alignment language. So as people will recall, the fee adjustments that were included in our bill did not yet reflect an agreement with the manufactured home advocates, and that was reached, and we did adopt that. We also accepted language from House GOP Chair Baker to exempt some well contractors from the Department of Labor and Industry's plan review and inspections. Those will be performed now by the Department of Health instead. And I'm very pleased to report that we also, as part of our bill, were able to adopt a provision allocating $3 million for the continued replacement of lead service lines in Minnesota. So that work continues, and we're very proud to be able to continue that work. So I'm very pleased with the bill, very proud of it, and happy to stand for any questions. Ask for your support. Thank you.
Discussion on Senate File 17. Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 17, a bill for an act relating to state government, establishing a biennial budget for jobs, labor, and economic development.
Third reading. Comments? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, members, for the discussion this year in the Jobs Committee. Like was said when we sent this bill out of the floor to Conference Committee, we had a very transparent year in the Jobs Committee. My only complaint up till Conference Committee would have been the lack of paid family medical leave discussion. And I worry about our local communities, our schools, our cities, our counties, Madam President, and the effect of the changes that we're proposing to them. And I wish we could have had discussion on that to get the point of view from our local communities. And then my only other complaint for the year with this committee would be the Conference Committee. And that is no fault of the Senate's. But we have to come up with a better process, Madam President. I know your committee that you chair, you're very transparent. It's the way it should be. All committees should strive to be as transparent as yours. Unfortunately, this committee, the big decisions were held behind closed doors and was not privy to those discussions. So with that, I'll let Senator Dornick talk about the labor portion. Thank you.
Further discussion, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank Senator McEwen for the bill and the hard work that was put in, and the members and those on the committee. I appreciate some of the things that were changed. Senator McEwen kind of mentioned some of the big ones for us. The manufactured home technical changes and fees was debated in the regular committees, and there were some changes being made, but not quite all of them were made in the committee, but in the Conference Committee they were, and I appreciate the working with stakeholders and getting to that piece in the valley. So that was a big thank you, Senator McEwen, and to the committee. The rest breaks, you mentioned that too. The $1,000 per employee per day was definitely excessive, and that was removed. We definitely want to support breaks, and we support our workers that deserve those breaks. So there was a compromise there, and that was removed. And then the unemployment extension for minors, that's in the jobs part, but I did want to give a appreciation for that. That is so very important. And then to the issues that I have too, Senator Draheim kind of mentioned the policy, or the process, I mean. But I'm going to talk just a little bit about the increase of the budget, which is the big problem that I have with the bill. So in the last biennium, the increase from the year before was approximately 50%. So 50% increase in the budget for the labor industry. And a lot of good things. I'm not saying they're not good. But taxpayers, Minnesotans, are struggling too, and businesses. And they have to make hard decisions. And some things that are good, they don't get to do. And so I think the budget is too much. And then with this year's biennium, the decrease in that budget was less than 1% from the previous year. So that concerns me. Again, it's a lot of good things, but there are some things that need to be trimmed, just like many Minnesotans are trimming their budgets to try to make things work. And then probably the biggest thing that wasn't addressed was the earn sick and save time. Now, there's just a couple minor changes, and of course we appreciate that. But just a little background again, one of the bills that when we had the co-chair at the beginning of the session, and I had a bill that was just exempting farmers with 5 employees or less. Went through the committee, passed, went to Agriculture Committee, passed, came to the Senate floor as one of the first bills that came here in the spring to be passed, and never got a hearing. And so then we had Senate File 2300, which Senator Seeberger brought, and very good debate on that, and that bill passed with, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 Democrats supporting that. And yet, in this bill, there just isn't much there. Small businesses are the backbone of our state. And many of those businesses, there's 500,000 plus small businesses. Many of those are 5 employees or less. And we tried to get an exemption for that. We had it started out to be 15, I think it went to 10, and then 9, and ended up to be 1. 1. So again, small businesses are just tired of not being heard. They're frustrated, hardworking small business owners, and they're good to their employees, most of them. There's always going to be some, but it seems like we tend to make bills and laws for the minority of those that are breaking them. And somehow we need to look at that. Labor and industry needs to work together as a partnership, and even when Senator McEwen mentioned the labor bill. No, it's not the labor bill. Without industry, we don't have labor, and without labor, we don't have industry. It's labor and industry in a partnership, and we should work to support both and listen to both. That balanced, and being that we are 201 legislators, you can't get much closer than that. And just my background, I grew up on a farm, 22 years as a union carpenter, and the last approximately 15 to 20 years as a small business owner. And being able to see and live out those struggles from the labor end of it and the business end, and trying to make ends meet on both of those sides. And the experience I have, I just feel like my voice, our voice is in the Senate here is just not very listened to very much. Some from the bills that they're made here, and some of the things I've brought up in the years past. But with that, I just, again, thanks the members and the work. I know it's a lot of hard work and those that put extra hours and time into this bill. I will not be supporting it, but there are many good things in it. But with that, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Senator McEwen, and then I'll call on Senator Champion to finish. Senator McEwen, any final comment?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I do just want to say some quick thank yous. And I did want to mention that one of the things that I'm really excited about in the bill that we were able to pass through this year is allowing the Department of Labor and Industry to apply for a temporary restraining order in district court. That will allow the department to take swift action for violations of labor law. And that is a tool that will provide greater worker protections, I think, at a time when we're all quite nervous about the breakdown of protections at the federal level, including major staffing cuts in labor protections coming from the federal government. So I would also just note that our target this year was $2 million for the first biennium and $1.2 million for the second biennium. And that relatively small, when you're looking at the large state budget amount that was allocated to us for the work of the state of Minnesota to protect working people is so critical. It has never been more important, I think, than it is in the days that we're living right now. So I think, and I just want to say also a thank you to the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry and all of the people who do the work in the department protecting Minnesota's workers from exploitation in the workplace. So I want to say thank you to them first off. I want to say thank you to all of the testifiers who came to testify in our committee. We had a number of working people come and share their stories, their asks with us, and I thank them so much, each and every one of them who took time out of their busy days, out of their work days and whatnot to come and share with us in the Labor Committee. And then finally, I do want to thank our minority lead in the Labor Committee, Senator Dornick. I'd also like to thank our Vice Chair, Senator Housechild, our committee members, Senators Grunhagen, Kupek, Liskey, Marty, Umer Verbaeten, Pappas, and Wiesenberg for all of their hard work in the committee. I'd also like to thank our nonpartisan counsel, Carlin Doyle-Fontaine, and fiscal analyst, Megan Birch, the reviser, Cherise Spear, our partisan researchers, committee administrator, Fabian Bean, committee legislative assistant, Chelsea Barks, our DFL researcher, Danny Gillis, and our GOP researcher, Victor Florell, and our committee pages, William Battle, Perrin King, and Betsy Rosemark. So with that, thank you very much.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to this body and the committee. My thank you list, I'm going to go through as expeditiously as possible, but I want to start with Senator Draheim, who's the lead. Thank you, and thank him for all the work that he's done, both in the committee and as well as a conferee. Just his feedback and his support is very valuable. Also, Senator Muhammad, who's our vice chair. She is a great vice chair, and she's with us every step of the way. Senator Gustafson, Senator Herr, Senator Housley, Senator Nelson, Senator Pa, Senator Pratt, who was the chair at one time, but he and I, have such a great relationship of going back and forth, and just getting the benefit of his capacity is always great. Also, Senator McEwen, thank you for the work that you've done when we think in terms of the labor area, but just being supportive all around. Senator Housechild, Senator Umu Verbaeten, Shamika Bogan, who's executive assistant to the president. She is just an all-around team player and makes sure that we get all of our work done. And I'm certain that Tom Milton, who's our committee administrator, will agree, but he's also just a phenomenal force. Also, Taylor Tidwell Bennett, who's our committee legislative assistant. I always like to say that she's a recent Spelman grad and a North High grad, because that's the high school I graduated from as well. Ben Petty, who's Senator Muhammad's legislative assistant, and he helped us with Zoom for all of our committee hearings, since every jobs committee hearing is hybrid, and so we are thankful for him. Our wonderful nonpartisan staff, Carlin Doyle-Fontaine, who's one of the greatest Senate counselors around, Senate Counsel. We so appreciate her. And Hannah Noder, who is our great fiscal person. If there's a number to be found, she's going to find it, and I always want to openly give her credit for that. Our partisan researchers, Damian Moore and Andy Larson. Interns, Isabella Ojotani and Alexis Alfaro and Tierra Lewis as well. And pages, Betsy Rosemark, Will Battle, and Perrin Clark. And I also want to thank the Commissioner of Deed, Commissioner Verlek, as well as all the others who've been really supportive from Deed. So thank you so very much, and I hope that you'll support the bill. Thank you.
Excuse me. The Secretary will take the roll on final passage of File 17. That is Murphy. Oh, yeah. Senator Bolden for those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye. Senator Rasmussen for those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Barr votes no.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Dames votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Drazkowski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Lang votes no.
Senator Lang votes no.
And thank you, Madam President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye. All senators having voted, the secretary will close the roll. There being 40 ayes and 27 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.
Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File Number 9 be taken from the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Murphy for another motion.
Mr. President, I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to Senate File 9, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended to give Senate File 9 its second and third reading and place it on its final passage, and I ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. The secretary will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. For those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye. Senator Rasmussen for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And Senator Jasinski votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 56 ayes and 10 noes. The motion to suspend the rules is adopted. The secretary will give the bill is second reading.
Senate File Number 9, a bill for an act relating to legislative enactments, correcting miscellaneous oversights, inconsistencies, ambiguities, etc.
Second reading. I'm going to now call on the chief author of the bill to explain it, and I want you to know that this is probably his re-election bill right here. Senator Limmer.
Why, thank you, Mr. President, for the confidence you've given me. Senate File 9 is the annual corrections bill. And to begin, I wanted to thank Senator Latz for joining as a co-author on this bill, making this bill truly bipartisan in the collaboration that we now enjoy today. It's an annual effort to correct miscellaneous oversights, inconsistencies, ambiguities, unintended results, and technical errors that the legislature may have made during this legislative session. It's different than the reviser's bill that passed earlier this year. For a correction to be included in this bill, the proposed correction must be approved by not only myself, but Senator Latz and two corresponding author and co-author in the other body. It has been recommended by the reviser's office, and I want to assure all that all proposed changes in this amendment have been properly approved and checked, and any references have been in question have been investigated by our researchers, not only in our caucus, but our nonpartisan researchers as well. I stand for any questions, hoping there are none, Mr. President.
Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I'm pleased to join Senator Limmer in recommending passage of the bill.
Any other discussions of the bill before we go to third reading? The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 9, a bill for an act relating to legislative enactments, correcting miscellaneous oversights, inconsistencies, ambiguities, etc.
Third reading. Any other discussion before we go to the author of the bill for final comments? Seeing none, Senator Limmer, final comments before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was asked informally by Senator Matthews to read the entire contents of the bill into the record, but I simply refuse. Thank you, Senator Matthews, and I think it's a good bill, and why don't we advance this one quickly? Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on Senate File 9 for final passage. Senator Rasmussen, are you prepared for those who are voting pursuant to Rule 40.7?
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Barr votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
Senator Drazkowski votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes aye.
And Senator Jasinski votes aye. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Westland votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes aye. Senator Coran and others? All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 63 ayes and 4 noes. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Senator Murphy for a motion to recess.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Having completed the Senate files, and congratulations on that, we will take a recess for approximately 60 minutes while we each go to our caucuses.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, we will caucus up in 323 today. So thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none. On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails and the Senate is now in recess to the call of the President.